All right, Casey, we're here to talk Howard Terminal. We've done this a few times, but I feel like we're due, aren't we?
Yeah, we're very due. There's a lot of action on the front.
There's been a lot of action, then no action, then some Rob Manfred comments, which we will get to in just a little bit. If you're new to what we're doing here, two parts of a conversation. This first part is going to go up here on my YouTube channel. The other half of this is going up on Casey's YouTube channel. So when you're at the end of this, or if you want to do it right now, that's fine too. Go subscribe, go check out Casey's channel. But we're tag teaming here. We're collaborating. Two 40-year-olds collaborating. That's always the best.
Possible action, Brody.
Well, okay, let's begin with this. Possible action, but not in the calendar year 2022. Nobody's officially come out to say it. I didn't expect anybody to do that, but we're not going to have any binding votes by Oakland here in 2022. And for both you and I and the buildup of all this and covering it, I think it was highly anticipated that something definitive would happen in Oakland by the end of this year. It's not. I'll ask this kind of rhetorically. Are we let down? Are we upset? Are we frustrated? Are we pessimistic or optimistic about this?
I would say let down, definitely, because all year we talked about binding vote season, and this was the season of binding votes. I still maintain you got the EIR certified, you got the BCDC vote, the Planning Commission that moved along the EIR. Those were all binding votes.
So it was a big year.
It did happen during binding vote season.
It was a big year.
The last one.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and the last one to me is like the bottleneck. And I talked to Sheng Tao, who's running for mayor, talked to Lauren Taylor about this too. It really does feel like we're waiting for this one. It's taking extra long, but if an agreement can happen with the A's in Oakland, and then a binding vote happens after some financial analysis, like this is the one that pushes all the other dominoes over. So I guess I'm only feeling let down in a sense that both sides were kind of angling us to feel like, hey, at the end of this year, we're going to know. But unfortunately, it's a 2023 thing. Now, knowing the people involved moving forward, I actually don't feel bad about it. Like, Libby Schaaf, a champion of the project. I think she was a big reason why we even got here on the Oakland side. But if you look at the front-running candidates for mayor, if you look at how the city council might shake out after this upcoming election, I don't think the stadium situation and the project, I don't think it's in a much worse place like I used to be concerned about. How do you feel about that?
100%. I really thought if we didn't get a vote before the end of the year, this thing was essentially dead. Rob Manfred wanted you to believe that as well. And, as things kind of progressed and we learned really that this thing wasn't going to be voted on before the end of the year and started looking at the political landscape, you started to notice it wasn't so bad. Before, there was a lot of questions about what would happen if Libby Schaaf was out of office when she's termed out. Who's going to step in as mayor? Are they going to support this thing? Are the city council members going to be in line with the change over there? In fact, there was one candidate who was very anti-Howard Terminal, then got endorsed by Labor and is now sort of open to Howard Terminal. I wonder how that happened. And so it actually doesn't look as bad as we initially projected it to be.
Yeah.
So I think it can definitely move forward. I still am disappointed it didn't happen before the end of the year, though, because that really kind of left the door open for Las Vegas to make a move. If they had gotten that vote in before the end of the year, this thing's a wrap almost at that point.
Well, we're also running into these months of November and December where not much besides the election, right, is going to happen anyway. These were kind of down months. The city council doesn't get together, I think, more than once or twice until the end of the year. And the timing, obviously, we ran out of time, but it also became that time of year where there's just not as much opportunity for progress to be made. I go back and look at, since we brought her up, Libby Schaaf. I mean, over all the years, and you could genuinely see she has bonded a relationship with the A's and Dave Cavill, a professional relationship of working together and trying to get this project to become a reality. How do we evaluate what she's done for the project? Because unfortunately, she's not going to be the one to ultimately see it through as mayor, but she did push the football pretty far up this field.
And I know we're going to get to Rob Manfred later in this video, but she also maintained a relationship with him, and that's critical too.
Yep.
You've noticed that he's complimented her many times over throughout this process. So that is critical as well. Where I really noticed a difference here, and you can tell me if you agree, is there was a time around last July where it was very combative. We didn't know what was going to happen with that big July 20th showdown.
Right.
Dave Cavill was everywhere all the time on every station that would allow him on, talking. There's just a lot of noise going on. The parallel paths were fired up. There's just a lot happening. Really, when I saw the biggest change in messaging in organization and kind of made everything copacetic is when Libby Schaaf became that mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Like she really started stepping up and being the one that was the voice of everything. And when that happened, it calmed everything down dramatically, right? Like before it was chaos.
That's a great point.
And then she kind of just said, you know what, I'm going to take this ball and roll with it. Quiet down. I'll handle the city. I'll talk to the commissioner. I'll talk to the A's. And that is really where things, to me, became a lot friendlier, so to speak. It wasn't like a battle. It was almost like, hey, we're all on the same team here.
Right. It's cordial.
So I credit her a lot for that.
You know, and I also feel like looking at how the rest of Oakland has handled this project, and some of the city staff, by the way, have been tremendous. Smalley Mayburn, like the way that she's presented and analyzed things. There have been, I'm not going to knock the entire city of Oakland, but maybe to your point, without her leadership and at least settling down an organization and let's everybody take a step back and look at this and then reapproach it. If it wasn't for her doing that, I don't know that we're here right now. I think Oakland might have just turned their shoulder and walked away from this entire thing. And not to say that they should have ever done that. They've got a lot to gain here. But I think it was maybe intimidating to join in on this conversation if it wasn't for her. So again, I look back and I know some people will instantly knock her and say, during your tenure, the Raiders left, the Warriors left, and the A's are not certain as you leave office. But I'll be honest. I mean, one team was like the Warriors made their decision and there wasn't even much of a talk about it. Like, we're leaving. See you later. And it's because San Francisco and Chase Center is what it is. And their ownership wanted that. And they've also played in other parts.
And they had the rights. Like, they had the rights to go there.
They had the ability to do it.
Yeah.
And really, it's not leaving the region. It's just relocating a different neighborhood in the Bay Area. It is Oakland losing a team, no doubt. But the Raiders were they have been the Raiders for decades, right? They've done dysfunctional things for years. And so I'm not even necessarily going to pin that on her either. Some people will. I don't think it's fair. Mm-hmm. I think in this, her last chance to save the last team, I look at it like she's done basically everything she can. So that's my take.
Agree. I would agree with that too. And I think that people see teams leaving Oakland and they try to put them all in one bucket. But each situation was so different, as you mentioned. And we really have to say, I mean, the Raiders were offered $750 million of public funds to go to Vegas. Nobody in their right mind would offer them that here, or should have offered them that here. And it was going to be impossible to beat that when it came. So,
and I think that's the thing too. You and I look at this project, and if it were a bad deal for the city of Oakland, the county of Alameda, our region in general, how could you and I get behind this like we do and put out the information like we do if there was something that was just like, oh, that's awkward and terrible? There's a lot of things that are not maybe perfect, but they're still great that Oakland can benefit from. So I credit Libby Schaaf on seeing that, being cordial with that, and getting us this far. So now it brings the question of somebody else is going to be mayor in the city of Oakland starting in January 2023. I've talked to Shang Tao. I've talked to Lauren Taylor. They're not the only ones, by the way, to be quite clear, but they are the biggest two front-running candidates. I think they're both favorable of the project. That being said, I see one that I think wants it easier and more and wants it to go smoother. And I'm not saying one will do the right thing and one won't. I'm just saying that one is just more angled towards having the project become a reality. I'm not going to go much farther than that. I'm not endorsing anybody, but this is an interesting race. And look, there's a lot of other issues on the table for the city of Oakland. Let's be very clear about that. But in terms of this one slice of pie, two candidates who, again, I think are similar in their background of what they want, but maybe one's going to be more hands-on with it. So what's your take on the next mayor?
I agree with that. I've actually done the same. I spoke to Lauren Taylor. I spoke to Shang Tao. I spoke to Treva Reed. And
that's another. There's another.
Reed has now kind of jumped in the camp with Taylor on the ranked choice voting 1-2. So she's almost already conceded. And if it is a two-person race, to me, I think Shang Tao is very fair about things. I think she recognizes that if she just comes out and says yes to Howard Terminal, no matter what you give me, that's a horrible negotiating position that nobody should take, right? Right. So she's being very pragmatic about it, but she's also being very fair. And I think Lauren Taylor is obviously very clearly in support of the project because he sees the benefits that it could have for the city of Oakland. But at the same time, all of these city council members that are currently there, those two, Tao and Taylor, are both city council members currently.
Right.
They have been looking at this the whole time, and they know where the lines need to be drawn. I mean, nobody, even if Lauren Taylor is very in favor of the project, again, nobody's going to vote yes if it's a bad deal.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And I think they've learned the hard way from the Raiders, which we were just talking about when they built Mount Davis. They're still paying for that monstrosity. And even in the Raiders last years, they had it tarped off. It's ridiculous. They're not going to make a deal like that again. And so they're doing a good job being gatekeepers, and you can still be a champion of the project while being a gatekeeper. I think, honestly, both the candidates would be a good choice for mayor. I'm not going to endorse anybody. It would be unfair, honestly, for me and Livermore and you and Danville to endorse anybody. But obviously, this is a big story that we cover. We cover the A's. The A's are in Oakland, and we've spent pretty much our whole lives there. So we can talk about it, obviously, but we're not going to make any endorsements.
Well, and to be fair, I want to say this. Both candidates, I think, would be good for the project. Like they've both said that they support this. They'll do things to make this happen. We're not saying, there's, a high contrast here. Maybe there's just a little bit more of a, like I said, polish and angle towards making it happen one way or the other. But they're different and they're bringing it up differently. I want to get into this too, not just a new mayor for the city of Oakland, but likely several new city council members. And that's super important because that binding vote comes from the council members. And I know that we're maybe not as versed in who's going to win each district or how that will shake out. But I don't think that Oakland is in a bad position city council member-wise other than this new onboarding and acclimation process. Like if there's two new city council members, hypothetically, they're going to have to get briefed on the entire negotiation, where things have been, where things are at. Their vote obviously matters. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag of what the city might get representing different districts, but I don't think that is going to cost the project either. At least that's the hope.
Yeah, fortunately, city staff are there. They have briefings. They have access to material. And also, this is why you can't get a vote before the end of the year. Let's say right now, as we talk, they came to an agreement. Done deal. We have an agreement. They need time to go over the material, right? And it's already November. So any agreement they come up with, even these new city council members are going to have adequate time to study it. They would never say, agreement here, vote now. It would be agreement here, all right, a couple months later, vote now. And so I think in a couple months, anybody could get up to speed if they really have access to the right resources. It's hard for people like watching this to be up to speed sometimes because while we try to put out the best information possible at all times, there's a ton of misinformation out there. And there's a ton of people that are confused, offering opinions, and it's really difficult. But if you're city council, you're going to get, here are the real numbers.
Right.
That's it.
And all those monies that are coming in currently that Oakland is putting itself out for are federal and state grants. They are line item grants that specifically go to infrastructure improvement at a port facility like the Port of Oakland and Howard Terminal. And it's funny because you mentioned the misinformation. Well, why wouldn't Oakland spend all that money on fixing the streets and crime in schools? Because it was earmarked specifically for this. And if Oakland didn't get this money, Baltimore, Seattle, Long Beach, they would have got this money. So, and it's not Oakland's money. How could you say you don't want, I mean, it's weird, right? You don't want to spend public money. You don't want to spend Oakland's public money or Alameda County's public money, but it's fine to spend California's public money. There was a huge surplus. That's the reason that Oakland is getting this. So I always equate it to like a college scholarship. If I gave you $50,000 a year that's a lot to go to a college, you can't go spend it on clothes and cars and, it's got to go to textbooks and tuition, right? So that's what this money goes for. And I think anybody that's been running for office has had a hard time, like, and I hope that's what they've been doing, is explaining to their constituents, like, this money is specific for this project and this is what we're working hard on. But I also want to say this too, in terms of timing, right? So we're saying here, okay, no rush, 2023, maybe that's when binding vote season like really culminates. At the same time, you run into a few things way down the road that are expiration dates. Like the environmental impact report, it expires, I believe, I should go back and check this, if construction doesn't start by like 2027 or 2028. No, we're years away from that. But there are some hard deadlines way down the road. So, when people say the A's can't play at the Coliseum for 5 more years, Rob Manfred, it's true, because the Howard Terminal EIR would have to be totally redone again. So there are some hard backstops. I do think we should explain that and put that out there. And I think there's another one, right, with the Port of Oakland. Is that true?
Yeah. I'll tell you. Here's my take on the deadlines.
Yeah.
All right. 1, if they don't have a deal done before the end of 2023, they're off the revenue sharing teat of Major League Baseball. That's the real deadline.
Is that official language right there, by the way?
That's the teat. Manfred actually explicitly wrote teat in that. So that's the big one to me.
Why is this going on my...
for the A's will go away if they don't have a deal.
Say that on your channel, not on... No, I'm just kidding.
So, yes, I will not do any hand gestures with that. So they have that going for them. The next major one, and it's not like a deadline so much as it is an expectation, is the Mega Projects Grant. They've applied for $180 million of federal infrastructure dollars. That will come either by the end of the year or early next year. That is a real deadline. The one that I have my eye on too now is the port exclusive negotiating agreement with the A's is coming up in the spring. And that one is really intriguing because right now the A's kind of have all the leverage in the situation. What happens when the exclusive negotiating rights are up with the port and they have an EIR and BCDC approval to do some things on that land? Could other developers come in and say, hey, now we want to build here?
Right.
And that could put some serious pressure back on the A's to like get this thing locked down. So I think that's an important one that no one's really talking about right now. Those are my major deadlines as it stands for me, at least in the next year.
Yeah. And 2023 has just got, there's no other two ways about it. It's got to happen by the end of next year, because if it doesn't, like, something is wrong. We ran out of time here in 2022. Elections, government officials changing, like a lot of stuff. And I get it. This negotiation has to be done right. I'd rather have it done right than done flimsy and fall apart next year. I'd rather wait these extra weeks and months and whatever to get it right one time. Kind of like the EIR. Get it right one time and move on and be done with it, and it's another step in the process. Okay, the elephant, not even in the room, but across the nation, especially in Oakland, being the elephant for the mascot. Rob Manfred made these comments at the very beginning of the World Series. And first off, people took them out of context because they only got a little bit of a snippet. Oakland likely to lose their baseball team, the A's likely to move to Las Vegas, and before anything could get corrected or clarified or anybody even heard his full comments, that was the headline. That's what got spread around, and unfortunately, there was kind of no turning back, even though, if you listen to it, it's not what he said, and then he did kind of turn back on it. So what's your take on the Manfred comments and how much he even knows about the daily updates when he makes a comment like that?
So I have a lot of different ways I can take this, and I know we're going to segue some of this into the next video. So I'll choose my words carefully.
Okay.
1, I have eyes and ears everywhere, Brody, as you know. And somebody had sent me on Friday right after the interview aired live, like, hey, I heard this. It sounded a little discouraging. And so I immediately thought, okay, I need to hear this for myself. So I started looking everywhere for this interview, and I couldn't find it. Like, I checked everywhere. Right. And it just wasn't online.
You need to hear it. You need to hear it,
yeah,
not just read 2 quotes. I want to hear the full thing. And by the way, Chris Russo interviewing him. So how was this?
Mad Dog interviewed him.
Yeah.
It happened live on the air, but it didn't get pulled and posted anywhere. So I couldn't find it anywhere Friday. So I just kind of moved on because I was like, I'm not saying anything until I hear it for myself. Saturday, I'm carving pumpkins with the kids, and then my phone blows up again because the Nightingale tweet happened.
Right.
We'll get into that, but the likelies of the scenario and the misinterpretation of the read made things happen. And let me just say this about Manfred's comments. A year ago, he said he didn't see a path to success in Oakland, right?
Right.
He said something very similar on Russo's show.
It was not new.
It's not new. Like, none of this is news at all.
Right.
And that's the thing that was funny to me is because it was misinterpreted, it became news. What the commissioner was trying to do in answering Russo's questions, and they're reasonable questions to ask, is put this on the front burner. We didn't hit a deadline here in Oakland, right? Vegas has been very quiet. What he's trying to do is drum things up, get it on the front burner again, get it talked about a little bit more. Hey, if it's quiet in Oakland, maybe it's time to make a move, Vegas. Hey, if Vegas makes a move, maybe Oakland answers, and then boom, here we are once again. Everything's on the front burner. We got a bidding war. We got negotiation leverage, et cetera, et cetera. That's really, I think, all he was trying to do, but then it blew up into a whole thing that it really wasn't.
Well, he did it. Well, it was a game one of the World Series, and then he goes, well, you know what? I take it all back. When the reporters followed up, I want this behind me, the World Series, to be the focus now. It's like, you opened up this door. You weren't, I mean, and it's partly his, not I don't say fault, but he brought this on. And then they asked him to clarify it. But again, I think most people asking the questions, to your point, had not even heard the full interview. When you hear it, it's things he's always been saying. And that gets me to wondering, like, and this is our next conversation. By the way, this is part one of me and Casey. Part two is like 30 seconds away because we're about to wrap this thing up and continue this conversation on why was Rob Manfred so strong on Tampa? Like, he said Oakland was not in a great spot, but he all of a sudden said the Tampa Bay Rays were really good and positioned well to stay in Tampa. Anyway, that's coming in just a second. But I just want to close this out by saying it was amazing how this all played out, the timing of it. Like, the World Series is baseball's crown jewel. Why would you want to put any kind of messy stuff out there on the table unless, like, to your point, like, this was very intentional that he wanted to bring this up. So messy, yes, but maybe he was trying to use that leverage to, to kickstart something. I'm just here to say that, a lot of times when you hear Howard Terminal news coming from the national perspective, I'm not sure they have all of the context on what's going on. And I'm not saying that that's why you need Pratt in Brazil, right? But I'm just saying, like consider where it's coming from. But man, it was so frustrating how easy everybody took the bait. And I still see the comments getting shared like, oh, Manfred said they're likely to leave. I mean, major news outlets just repeated the Nightingale tweet. So it was frustrating. I think it's probably where we leave it. So ready for part two?
Let's do part two. Head over to my channel right now, guys. We're going to do part two. And we're going to dive into that topic more and a whole bunch more.
All right. Thanks for watching this. And we will see you over at part two. Go there now.